One Sunday morning, an old cowboy entered a church. Just before services were to begin, although the old man and his clothes were spotless clean, he wore jeans, a denim shirt, and boots that were very worn and ragged. In his hand, he carried a worn out old hat and a worn out Bible. The church he entered was very upscale and an exclusive part of the city. It was the largest, most beautiful church the old cowboy had ever seen. And the people of the congregation were all dressed in expensive clothes and accessories. As the cowboy took a seat, the others settled down in the area away from him. No one greeted him, no one spoke to him, and nobody welcomed him. They all were dismayed at his appearance and did not attempt to hide it. The preacher gave a long sermon about hell, fire, and brimstone, and a stern lecture on how people ought to be finding more people to win to Jesus because baptisms were down. As the old cowboy was leaving the church, the preacher approached him and asked the cowboy to do him a favor. Before you return next time, maybe have a talk with God and ask him what he thinks about the appropriate attire for worship. You might find that would help you fit in a little better and feel more at home with us. The old cowboy assured the preacher he would. The next Sunday, he showed back up for the services wearing the same ragged jeans, the same old shirt, the same wore-out boots, and that old 10-gallon hat. Once again, he was completely shunned and ignored. The preacher approached the man and said, I thought I asked you to speak with God about your attire and get his input on the matter of appropriate dress for worship in his church. Oh, I did. I truly did, replied the old cowboy. If you spoke to God, what did he tell you the proper dress should be for worshiping in here? Asked the preacher. Well, sir, God gave me that. He didn't have a clue what I should wear here these days. He says he's not attended here in a long time. For the Lord does not see as man sees. For man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. This morning I want to talk to you about something that is very important to me. We've been very blessed at Crosspointe because we've had hundreds of people come to know Jesus. We had 2 last week that weren't even in these walls. One was at the jail, and one was in the backyard of a house when I got a phone call after bike night. God's still working. Sometimes he doesn't work in the 4 walls. A lot of times. I want to talk about baptism. But sometimes the decision to do this and get baptized scares people. And not all for the same reason. The awesome part about this thing is that there's a blessing for you, and it also blesses others. I don't know about you, but when we dunk people in this tank right back here, I get blessed inside. That's why I said we're kind of Baptist-costal. Sometimes I think about maybe taking a few laps around the church, but I wouldn't want to scare you. What I'm saying to you this morning is I want to discover what God's Word says about baptism. A drunk stumbled along a baptismal service on a Sunday afternoon down by the river. He proceeded to walk down into the water and stood next to the preacher. The minister turned and noticed the old drunk and said, Mister, are you ready to find Jesus? The drunk looks back and says, Yes, preacher, I sure am. The minister then dunked the fellow under the water and pulled him right back up. Have you found Jesus? The preacher asked. No, I didn't, says the drunk. The preacher then dunks him under quite a bit longer, brings him back up, and says, now, brother, have you found Jesus? Nope, I didn't, preach. The preacher, in disgust, holds the man under for at least 30 seconds, and this time brings him out of the water and says, in a harsh tone, friend, are you sure you hadn't found Jesus yet? The old drunk wipes his eyes and says to the preacher, are you sure he fell in? Oh, me. It's always good to start service out with a few, Baptism is a very serious thing. This morning we're not looking for Jesus in the water. So why do we dunk people in the water? I mean, most of you, if not all of you, I hope all of you, take a bath. And you go swimming. But why is it different than that, and why is it so important? You know, baptism happens today because of what Jesus said just before he went to heaven. It was already in practice with John the Baptizer. You remember him? How many of you watched that movie just not too long back about the Bible? It was on TV. Turned our network upside down, didn't it? John the Baptist baptized Jesus and the disciples, but that wasn't enough. Let's look at Matthew 28:19. Jesus said, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Mark 16:15 says, he said to them, go into all the world and preach the good news to all creation. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved. But whoever does not believe will be condemned. You know, there was a lot of people in the Bible that got baptized. The people in Samaria, remember in Acts 8:12? Remember Cornelius, the centurion? How about Lydia, the dealer of purple cloth from the city of whatever that is, Thyatira? Remember the Philippian jailer? He went straight to his house there, didn't he? And many of the Corinthians, hearing and believing, were baptized. But baptism was something Jesus instructed us to do, and it was carried out by many people in the Bible. But why is it so important? We all know that the water doesn't save us. But to understand this, I want you to just take a minute, and we want to look at 4 pictures used in the New Testament to explain the importance and meaning of baptism. 1 Peter 3:20 and 21. This is in the Message Bible. You know, even though God waited patiently all the days that Noah built his ship, only a few were saved then. 8 to be exact. Saved from the water by the water. The waters of baptism do that for you, not by washing away dirt from your skin, but by presenting you through Jesus' resurrection before God with a clear conscience. The flood is a picture. The 8 people on board the ark knew that they were different than all the other people in the world. Yeah, they were different. They believed, didn't they? Because back then there'd never been flood. There'd never been rain. They didn't even know, to my knowledge, what a boat looked like. That'd be kind of like somebody building a new mode of transportation and us not believing in it, huh? I mean, I don't know that we would notice Jesus if he walked in these doors. I would hope I would, because of my relationship. They were saved because they believed what God said would happen. And the wicked people, they kind of floated away, didn't they? They got a fresh start when it landed. A new beginning. Look at 1 Corinthians 10, verses 1 and 2. It says, "For I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, and that they passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea." Now everybody remembers when God parted the Red Sea. Y'all remember that story? By crossing the Red Sea, many things were taking effect. One is, if God told you that he was going to split Brookville wide open, would y'all trust him? Could y'all walk out into Brookville? Heaven only knows how deep that water is. You'd have to trust him, wouldn't you? Those people trusted the Lord, what he was telling them to do. They had to trust him. They were leaving their past behind. They had a new future, but it was unknown and a little scary. I believe it would be. So I think if God would split Brookville wide open, there'd probably be a few catfish that could eat me, and you know them. I believe they could. One gulp, just, and you're gone. I think they had a song on Hee Haw, didn't they? Anyway, this popped. I got an image. I had to say it. They were leaving slavery, and they were becoming warriors. Their past ruler or leader over them died and was gone away, and now they had a new one. Everybody remember Pat Summerall? Some of you won't. I barely do. Spent 50 years in the National Football League. He was drafted by the Detroit Lions in 1952 and played with the Chicago Cardinals and New York Giants until 61. After his retirement from the game, he joined CBS as a broadcaster. And in 1993, switched to Fox. During his CBS years, he and a fellow broadcaster partied hard off the field. They raised Cain. I was the first guy at the bar and the last one to leave. Summerall was told that if he kept on drinking, he was going to die. After checking himself into the Betty Ford Clinic, his counselor urged him to seek a better life through faith. At age 66, Pat Summerall was baptized. In USA Today, he told a reporter that when the minister leaned me back in the water, I never felt so helpless. Summerall testified, I'd just become a Christian. And I can't tell you how great my life has been since I surrendered to the Lord. There's things in the Bible that said the Lord instructed us to do, and one of them was baptism. What was another? Communion. There may have been many helpless feeling when the Israelites walked through the waters, seeing the past coming after them. When they came up out of the water and the waters rushed back, they had a brand new life. Same way with your salvation. The day that you ask Jesus Christ back into your heart and life, you've drawn a line in the sand. Never to go back and worry about all that stuff you done. I got a good one. Doesn't mean that consequences aren't going to creep back up and come up and haunt you because you've made the wrong choice in life. But when you accept Christ into your heart and life, you become, the Bible says, a new creation. It makes you want to go on and turn away from where you were. Change things that He wants you to change. Let's look at Colossians 2:11. In Him, Jesus Christ, you were also circumcised in the putting off of the sinful nature, not with the circumcision done by the hands of men, but with the circumcision done by Christ, having been buried with Him in baptism, and raised with Him through your faith in the power of God, who raised Him from the dead. When you were dead in your sins, and in the uncircumcision of your sinful nature, God made you alive with Christ. He forgave all of our sins. You're a new creation. Baptism is a public profession of your faith. There was a machinist at the Ford Motor Company in Detroit who became a Christian. He responded to the invitation and was baptized. As the Holy Spirit began renewing this man, he became convicted of his needs to make restitution for some parts and tools he had stolen from the company prior to becoming a Christian. So the next morning, he brought all the tools and parts back to his employer. That'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? Some guy come driving up, starts unloading his truck with who knows what, welders, hammers, nuts and bolts. He explained how he had just become a Christian and asked his foreman's forgiveness. Can you imagine what that foreman thought? What else is he fixing to tell me? This was such an amazing turn of events that Mr. Ford, who was visiting a plant in Europe at the time, was cabled with the details of the matter and asked his response. Mr. Ford immediately returned to Cable with his decision. Dam up the Detroit River. Let's get everyone saved, baptized. I want you guys to look at Romans 6:1. Romans 6:1 through 12. It says, "What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Certainly not. How should we who died in sin live any longer in it? Or do you not know that as many of us as were baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death? Therefore we're buried with him through baptism and death, that Jesus as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father. Even so we also should walk in newness of life. For if we have been united together in the likeness of his death, certainly we also shall be in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man was crucified with him, that the body of sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves to sin. For he who has died has been freed from sin. Now if we died with Christ, we believe that we shall also live with him, knowing that Christ, having been raised from the dead, dies no more. Death no longer has dominion over him. For the death that he died in sin once for all. But the life that he lives, he gives to God. Likewise, you also reckon yourselves to be dead indeed to sin, but alive in Christ, our Lord. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body, that you should obey in its lust. Paul Harvey. Everybody remember him? The rest of the story. Come on about 12 o'clock, sometimes 1, depending on where you were in the world. He wrote in Guidepost magazine about his own baptism. He said that even though he had received almost every reward for his broadcasting ability, he still felt empty inside. One summer, he and his wife were vacationing in a place called Cave Creek, Arizona. Sunday morning came and they decided to go to church. So they went to this little church, and there were only 12 people present. He had a relationship with Jesus. He had already asked Jesus for his salvation. But the preacher got up and announced that his sermon was going to be about baptism. Paul Harvey said, I yawned, but as he started talking about it, I found myself interested. He talked about the symbol behind it, how it symbolizes the complete surrender of one's life to Jesus, how there was nothing really magic about the water, but there was this cleansing inside yourself that took place when you yield yourself to Jesus. He went to say that finally, when he came to the end of his sermon, he said, if any one of you have not been baptized, I invite you to come forward and join me here at this pulpit. Paul Harvey said, to my surprise, I found myself going forward. The preacher said that there was nothing magic in the water, but yet as I descended into the depths, I rose again, and I knew something had happened in that surrender. No longer did there seem to be something uncertain. Said he felt fulfilled. Paul Harvey went on, the change this simple act made in my life is so immense, it is indescribable. Since totally yielding to him, my heart cannot stop singing. Because baptism is a public act. Because one's dignity gets drenched. He discovered a new unconscious in talking about my beliefs. This morning as we get ready to go, I get the guys to come up and play something real soft. I'm not going to take a long time, but you know, life's all about decisions. And I really, seems like the past 3 weeks, everything that I do, I've been slapped in the face with decisions and the consequences. You know, guys may get tired of hearing me say time and time again that, you know, we can read the Bible and look at all the stories in the Bible. And when kings started being defeated in their armies, when they were winning by only having a fraction of the people that they were fighting against, You see in the Bible that 3,000 slew 15,000 and 5,000 took tens of thousands. And sometimes all of a sudden it went from awesome, God working in your life, to like somebody put the brakes on and you're done. What happens? It comes down to one word: choices. Each one of you here today, make choices every time you get up. I'm not condemning one person in this room, but I know some of you's life is pretty tight.